2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app. RevoFitness.com.au or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
This podcast was recorded on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
Hello and welcome to The Real Story with Joe Hildebrand. It's an absolute pleasure to have your company. A huge show this week. I've got everything you need to know about that phone call between Anthony Albanese and the Donald Trump. And is Rudd going to survive as ambassador to the United States in the middle of our latest trade war? Or is it a trade war? I've got all the answers to all that coming right up. So first up this week, this has got to be the most talked about phone call in Australian history. This is the call between Anthony Albanese and Donald Trump just after Trump announced that there would be a 25% tariff on Australian steel and aluminium exports to America. Now, there is a huge amount to reveal underneath the surface of that. And the first thing you need to know is that that phone call wasn't even organised in relation to Trump's announcement. That phone call had already been booked. That had already been set up a week earlier and had been set up with the Prime Minister's office and the US Embassy in Washington, Australia's US Embassy in Washington. Yes, that one, the one that's run by Kevin Rudd. So Kevin Rudd actually had a hand in setting up the phone call with Donald Trump. Now, it was already scheduled for 8 a.m. on the Tuesday morning, and it had already been set to take place then. And then, just a day earlier, Trump announces that he's going to put a 25% tariff, not just, and this is very, very important, not just on Australian steel and aluminium exports to the US, but on everybody's, on the whole world's. And the way it's been sort of cast, and fair enough because we're in Australia, so we only care about what affects us, but you could be forgiven for thinking that he's just come after our exports. In fact, he's just gone after all steel and aluminium imports to America from his perspective, and he wants to slap a tariff on them to make American steel and aluminium more competitive because, of course, Donald Trump won election thanks to the Rust Belt. And what's rusting? The steel. Because America used to make huge amounts of steel and it doesn't anymore because it's cheaper to import it from other countries, which is why he wants to put the tariffs on. Okay? But these are not tariffs targeting Australia like the tariffs that he threatened against Canada and Mexico. These were tariffs that weren't even threatened for any economic or trade purpose when he was talking about Canada and Mexico. These were just tariffs to force these countries to be tougher on border protection, to be tougher on humans and drugs coming into America across those borders. And it worked. They all came to the party, said, yes, sorry, we'll do much more. We'll build 1,000 walls. Justin Trudeau came out and said, we'll give you whatever you want. We'll have a fentanyl czar, $1.5 billion. Well, it's Canadian dollars, so it's probably worth about $2,500. Anyway, so everything happens. But those were targeted tariffs against specific countries for a specific reason. This is just a broad tariff is applied to all imports to the United States from overseas. And Australia just happens to be one of the countries on the list. So that is the first thing to know. This is something Australia has been inadvertently caught up in. And that is very much the sense at the top of the tree. That's what people at the top of our government think, that this was just a sort of accident, if you will, an oversight. Already, Trump had a phone call with Anthony Albanese just after he got elected last year. And they said that, remember, you've got an actual trade surplus. We import more from America than America imports from us. So you're actually winning. You're doing a better job of selling your stuff to us than we are of selling to you. So you actually win the trader imbalance. So Anthony Albanese reminds Trump of this just after he gets elected. And then, of course, he has another phone call scheduled after the president has been sworn in. And this is no mean feat. We are one of the first that Trump has spoken to. So aside from all the stuff that he has to do for various national security reasons and his trip to Israel, where he said he was going to buy the Gaza Strip and turning it into luxury beachfront condominiums or something. But we were one of the first few countries whose phone call he took post-inauguration. And it just so happened that that call, which had already been set up, happened to be scheduled for just after he makes that announcement. And that is why the Prime Minister, Albanese, is talking to him not just about the trade sanctions. He's talking to him about everything, talking to him about, AUKUS, talking to him about, the footy and the South player who just won the Super Bowl single-handedly. Also talked about golf. We know that Trump loves golf. And they also talked about something that Trump also loves, which is aeroplanes. Trump likes big stuff, big planes. And Albo is a massive aviation nut. And not just because he lives under the flight path, or used to before he got all big and famous, but because he used to be the transport minister and the federal transport minister. Your main area of transport is, of course, aviation. So Albo knows all about that stuff. And one of the things that Australia imports a lot of from America is planes. And so, again, he reminds Trump that we're importing lots of planes from him, for example. Now, people have since come out and said, actually, we import lots of other stuff more than planes, like construction equipment, It's like, yeah, but that doesn't float Trump's boat. You want to get Trump's attention, you put something big and shiny in front of him, like a Boeing 747. So Albo reminds me of this, tells him all this. The phone call is supposed to go for just 20 to 30 minutes. It's scheduled to just go for 20 to 30 minutes. It goes for 40. So that in itself is a very good sign. You do not spend longer than you have to talking to someone who you are going to screw over no matter what. Again, in diplomacy, when you get the phone call and how quickly is a very big deal and a very important marker of how close the relationship is, and how long that phone call goes for is a very big sign. And that's why you hear people talking about that. And this is what world leaders and diplomats and lawyers are looking for as signs that the relationship's going well, we're going to get a deal, we're going to get a breakthrough. Now, the other thing that happens in the phone call, were that not enough, is that the two men agree what they're going to say afterwards. And they both agree that they will say that an exemption, a carve-out for Australia from these tariffs is under consideration. Right? Now, again, if you are not planning to do something, you don't say it's under consideration. You just don't do it. Because why would you protract an inevitable process? Why would you raise hopes only to dash them again? It makes you look like an asshole twice over. There is absolutely no political benefit in saying, all right, I'll have a look and I'll review it, and then coming back and saying, no, we're just going to do it anyway. If you're going to do it anyway, you just do it. Then Trump goes out and I love this guy, but he comes out and he says, yeah, I just got to say there's going to be no exceptions. We're going to have trade tariffs on the whole world, no exceptions. And then someone up the back says, didn't you just get off the phone call to Australia and say, oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, apart from that. And he says, yeah, I spoke to the Prime Minister of Australia, a very fine man. Now that is extremely important. And he says, yes, and yeah, it's under consideration. It's under great consideration. Now, we all know that great is Donald Trump's favorite word. Great is what he's going to make America again. So he reaches a deal with the PM just to say that this is under consideration, which again, you don't do if you're planning on absolutely having the status quo, no exceptions. And then he comes out and says not only that it's under consideration, but it's under great consideration. MAGA consideration. He's going to make Australia great again, or he's going to consider making Australia great again. And the other thing, of course, is that Donald Trump is a transactional politician. He likes to win. He likes to make a deal. And the only point in making a deal is if you think that you are getting the better deal out of it. And if you're winning, you want both sides to think you're winning, but Donald Trump wants to know that he is the winningest winning of all. And of course, that is another thing that the PM both raised with him in his first phone call after being elected and reminded him again in this phone call, which is that you are already winning the trade war. If there is a competition in trade between America and Australia, you are already winning. In fact, we import about twice as much in dollar terms from America as America imports from us. So you're already winning. All we ask is that you just keep winning. And of course, Donald Trump is very receptive to this because, oh, that's right, we are winning. And so he can do that. He can do that deal. He can take it to his people and say, yes, I've established that we've already got an awesome trade deal with Australia in which we're already winning and they give us twice as much money as we give them. And because I have decided in my magnanimity that Anthony Albanese is a very fine man, I've decided, being a kind and merciful God, that I'm going to do a special favour for our mates in Australia who just gave us $500 million American just to shore up the AUKUS deal. So again, we are sweetening the deal. We are paying tribute to him. And he loves that stuff. And he says, yes, I've decided I will give great consideration. And after my great consideration to this very fine man, I will exempt Australia from the 25% tariffs that I'm applying to everybody else. Thank you very much. I'm Donald Trump. And we will find out if I'm right or not with our very own Trump whisperer, Paul Murray, who's going to join us later in the show and talk about just what makes the Donald tick. What is he thinking when he makes announcements like these and what we can expect in the future?
Two words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app, revofitness.com.au, or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
Now, on top of all this stuff between Albo and Trump is all the stuff between Albo and Rudd and Trump and Rudd, which just makes this whole story just even more intriguing and, if you're a political nerd like me, just sexy as hell. I know you don't often hear the words Kevin Rudd and sexy in the same sentence, but you have now, so just let that percolate. So Albo and Rudd go way, way back. I know this because I go way, way back with both of them as well. But Kevin Rudd was, of course, the Prime Minister, and he got rolled just after a by-election in Penrith, west of Sydney, a state by-election that went horribly, horribly, horribly wrong for the Labor Party. But again, not for the federal Labor Party that Kevin Rudd was the Prime Minister of, but for the state Labor Party. And the polling around there, where there was just a huge amount of discontent, the state Labor government was into its fourth term. They just rolled a succession of premiers. They'd been through 3 premiers in as many years, Maurice Yemmer, Nathan Rees, and then Christina Keneally, who went on to lead the party to a record loss, as you would after 16 years in government. And that was the by-election result that was the death knell for Kevin Rudd. But not as far as one Anthony Albanese was concerned. Albo stayed loyal to Rudd. He was the chief numbers man for the left faction, and Rudd was nominally in the right faction, but nonetheless it was the left faction, most of it, that lent its support to Rudd, while the right faction, which had the numbers in the caucus, threw its weight behind Julia Gillard, who is, just to make things even more confusing, from the left faction. But there are 2 factions within the left faction, and they hate each other. So Anthony Albanese was loyal to Kevin Rudd, even when he knew that Kevin Rudd was doomed. Everybody knew that he was going to lose that challenge in June 2010. I remember it very well because he was knifed on my birthday, June 23rd. I was at the pub, it got very empty very quickly. And so this is something that Albo puts a real primary value on, loyalty. He was loyal to Rudd even when Rudd was going to lose, and that meant that Albo would lose his ministry. He then offers to resign as minister to Julia Gillard. He says, I accept that I backed the losing candidate and here is my resignation. To her great credit, she refuses to take it. She says, no, I want you to stay on in your role as Transport Minister and Leader of the House, I think it was. And that is an enormous credit to both of them. He did the honourable thing by offering to resign, and she did the honourable thing by not accepting it. Now, throughout that time when Gillard was Prime Minister, Albo continued to support Kevin Rudd, but he never publicly undermined, betrayed, spoke against Julia Gillard. So again, he behaved, despite personally being loyal to Rudd, he always publicly supported his Prime Minister and was one of the very few people to act with a degree of honour through this horribly dishonourable and dirty and messy and backstabbing period of Australian political history. Then, of course, Rudd comes back. Albo supports Rudd coming back, as he was always going to, and everyone knew he would. That was very clear. Albo becomes Deputy Prime Minister for about 3.5 seconds. Then Rudd gets swept out of office in a landslide by Tony Abbott, but not as big a landslide as people feared or thought or knew, depending on who you ask, that Julia Gillard would have lost by had she stayed on as Prime Minister. So fast forward to a couple of years ago, and Albo is now the Prime Minister. Kevin Rudd has been sort of out in the wilderness a bit. He's the head of various sort of prestigious institutions, the Brookings Institution and the Asia Society and stuff like that, think tanks and stuff. But he's not getting the sort of attention that he's used to, and he's not wielding the sort of power that he's used to. He's also spending a lot of time on Twitter. A lot of time on Twitter. He's the chairman of Australians for a Royal Commission into Murdoch, or the Murdoch Press. And that's pretty annoying for any government. It's like, can you shut the guy up who's trying to piss off half the media in Australia? But also Rudd goes off and writes a really good book about China and what to do about China. And Anthony Albanese read that book and he really liked it. It really impressed him. And he thought, this guy has a lot of really smart ideas. Kevin Rudd, of course, spent a lot of time in China. He speaks Mandarin. He was a diplomat in China, Beijing. And he knows how to handle that country. And that country is about to become the most important country in the world. And so Albo thinks, all right, well, I'll stick Kevin Rudd as our most prestigious ambassador, the ambassador to the US. It is the number one ambassadorial position, bar none. And of course, the US, like Australia, is most worried about China more than anything else. And who's the guy who knows more about China than anyone else? It's Kevin Rudd, it's our ambassador. And as an added bonus, he's going to have to stop tweeting. And so all these years later, he lifts Kevin Rudd out of almost obscurity, out of the bowels of social media where he's tweeting away about Rupert Murdoch, and says, right, here's a job worthy of your intellect and worthy of your energies. Rudd is just a psychotically hard worker. So he puts him in there, and Rudd has been doing all this stuff. He's been running around behind the scenes, notwithstanding the fact that he said some really stupid and mean things about Donald Trump on Twitter, of course. Running theme here. Grown-ups should not be using Twitter. Anyway, he's actually got some really good relationships. He knew, I'm told, that Donald Trump was going to win, and so was preparing all these relationships in anticipation of that. And he was instrumental in setting up the phone call I talked about earlier, which was already set up and ready to go even before it needed to happen when Trump announced the trade tariffs. And so that is Anthony Albanese and Kevin Rudd in a nutshell. These are people who have stuck by each other for decades now. And certainly in the case of one of them, being Anthony Albanese, that loyalty is just impossible to shake. And I can tell you that Kevin Rudd will not be going anywhere. And you raise that with Albo, even if it might be politically advantageous, or it might seem to be easy, or it might be a bone you could throw to appease Trump or make him look like the big man. Albo's going to stick by him because Albo is a loyal mate. And I don't know about you, but I like that. And I think it's something we should probably see more of in both politics and life instead of less.
Two words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app, revofitness.com.au, or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
So, as discussed earlier, the huge news this week is that Trump has hit Australia with 25% tariffs on its steel and aluminium exports. And it's funny when it happens to someone else, but when it happens to us, well, it's just not fair. And so we've brought in the one man who can channel the wisdom and wiliness of the Donald, our very own Trump whisperer, Paul Murray, host of Sky News. Paul Murray's Live. No.
That's okay. Don't worry. It's fine. The name's in the title.
Host of... It's like, hi, it's The Real Story with Joe Hildebrand, and I'm Joe Hildebrand from The Real Story with Joe Hildebrand. This is Paul Murray Live, the host of Paul Murray Live, and he joins us now live. Paul Murray.
Hello, yes, one handshake and an entire personality has melded and been shared. So, yeah, thank you. It's an honour to be here as an official Trump whisperer.
It is an honour to have you. Now, this is the real deal, because you are one of the very few people, you know Donald Trump, you've met Donald Trump, you've interviewed Donald Trump, you've got a read on this guy. What is he doing?
Well,
what's he doing to us?
I appreciate
more
the big
specifically?
sell about knowing and all the rest of it. Look, what started as Trump curious becomes, pro-Trump and Trump understanding, right? So you've got to look at a couple of things here. One, second time around, he is not all that interested in having world leaders supporting him. He's not all that interested in looking, quote unquote, legitimate by having bilateral relations here and discussions there. Instead, second time around, it's the world will bow to me.
Yep.
And it has. I mean, you saw even before he was president when they were opening Notre Dame Cathedral in France.
That's right.
He
You had
wasn't
to
the
pry
president.
Macron off him with a crowbar.
Yeah.
It was all over him, like
They all
like barrel of monkeys.
Yeah, like if there is such a thing as, the leader of the world, right?
Yeah.
He was that in that moment, right? He's that personality now. And his central idea is that one of the ways that he wants to fund the American government is for the world to pay a tax to the United States for access to the United States, right? So at its heart, that's what he's saying. But something that's also really clear about Trump is that Trump wants to make, when he makes a big announcement, a huge first impression.
Yes.
And then whatever the details are, whatever the actual implementation is, whatever happens a week later or a month later, the reality is, his hope is that the media is being swamped with that day's big announcement. So I am confident that Australia ends up with some sort of a carve-out somewhere, but that's part of the thinking about Trump. You've got to understand that sort of it's like waves on the beach, and the most recent one to land is the most important one, but just like those waves on the beach, part of the water that you don't see is going back out to sea.
Well, I'm so glad you said that about the carve-out, because that's what I predicted earlier in the show, so hopefully we're both right. But it is that interesting thing, and you said you said something that stuck with me. Whenever Trump announces something and everyone just goes wild about it and goes, oh my God, the world's going to end. Just wait a week. Just wait a week and then see where things end up. And they usually end up in a pretty good place for everybody. I mean, if you look at and again, the same thing with the tariff announcements on Canada and Mexico, everyone's going, and the same people who are getting hysterical about the tariffs here were going then, they're just overreacting. Clearly it's an ambit claim. He's just dropping a rock in the pond and then they'll do a deal. And the same thing presumably will happen here.
Well, yeah. I mean, don't forget as well, right? there's always a little asterisk and a little fine print, right? In the case of these things, they don't kick in until March.
Yep.
So there is theoretically a period of time between big splashy announcement and when the world is going to start to pay. It's in that period of time that someone somewhere, and there's a lot of people around Trump that are very pro-Australia, right?
Yes.
There are a lot of people either in the Republican Party through Florida or literally mates like Greg Norman, right, who have the capacity to turn around and say the Australian story. And the truth is, the Australian story is, look, the market's not really that big, but more importantly, you know, you send more stuff to Australia than Australia does to America. So, you know, really,
You're winning.
Yeah,
and Donald likes to win.
Correct.
So as soon as he gets reminded that you're actually doing better out of this deal. This is a great deal, Donald. And he goes, oh yeah, great.
yeah, exactly. But also don't forget, literally last weekend, we handed over a check for 500 million US dollars,
800 million
okay,
Australian.
which is 800 Australian. You think you think you've got the Harry hits when you've got to go, or when you are going to Disneyland or Vegas or something. You go, geez, the conversion rate. Imagine the federal government, us the taxpayer.
Yep.
300 million extra we have to pay because of the disparity between the economies at the moment. So that said, you know, obviously you've seen also that Trump is a person who obviously wants to get along with people, but also wants that relationship to clearly be he's on top and you're not. So you saw that when he was talking about the experience with Anthony Albanese on the phone, it was, a wonderful man, lovely. Because, of course, what it was, Mr. President, want to say, congratulations, so good. Look, we'll find a time, but let's have a chat about our system. But I completely understand your tariff policy. Oh, okay, cool. And it just that'll start to whir away. But also it doesn't hurt that we've got US subs in Perth. We've got Marines in Darwin, and we've got
what do we have to do?
the middle of the country,
We're
spying on the rest of the world.
state after Canada.
Yeah, correct.
And this is Trump. I mean, even above and beyond Australia, this is a template that Trump has been rolling out time and time and time again with great effect. In fact, I can't think of a time when it hasn't worked. Like he says to Hamas, you hand over the hostages or they'll be hell to pay by the time I'm sworn in. Guess what? They reach a ceasefire deal to hand over the hostages just before he's sworn in, a day or two before.
Yes.
He says to Canada, you better get control of the fentanyl and the people smuggling on your borders or whatever. Otherwise, I'm going to slap you with a, billion% tariff. I think it was another 25%. And they say, this is reckless. It's the end of the world. It'll destroy both our economies. Next thing you know, Trudeau's put out a statement saying, we will spend $1.5 billion on a new fentanyl czar and 10,000 troops on the border to stop all that. And then suddenly the tariff's gone away.
Correct.
And yet every time he brings up something like this, he drops one of those big bombs. Yeah. Everyone's still we're a bit like Springfield, aren't we? It's like, oh my God, it's happening again.
Yeah, but look.
It's your wait a week theory.
Well, this is the thing. The very simple way of understanding the Trump world is, okay, that's interesting. I'll see you in a week's time. That has to be the emotional way that you respond. If you're sitting there going, greatest decision ever, air guitar. Okay, you're going to be disappointed. And, oh my goodness me, the sky is falling. It's so terrible. It's so offensive. Somebody please call the manager. Guess what? You're not going to get the disaster that you want. Thank you, by the way, acting skills.
That was it. That was incredible. Hang on, sorry.
Thank you. Surely I'm some sort of online Whopper entrant. Maybe I get it, not Nida, but surely Whopper, they'll take anyone. They took Hugh Jackman. Now, he's more talented, isn't he?
No, I was going to say there's actually a striking resemblance. You've got the beard, you've got the moves, you've got those twinkly blue eyes.
Thank you.
No, but you're absolutely right. I mean, the most striking thing about the tariff announcement is that the same people who thought it was great when he announced the tariffs against Canada thought it was terrible when he did it to us.
Yeah, but
also the same people who were hysterical about that and then it all turned out to be fine are hysterical about this while forgetting that it always turns out to be
well. Also, look, much has changed since the last time that he was president. Even sort of the dying days of 2020, right, as opposed to the early days of 2017. I'm not sure that the world wakes up anymore and rolls over and goes, what happened overnight? Has the world come to an end? Did the orange man destroy the planet? I don't think people are there anymore. Yeah. I think that people understand that Trump, the second time around, he absolutely knows what he's doing, right? Yeah. And he's leaning in every way possible to get the type of America that he wants, right? Yeah. And it's pretty obvious that unlike previous administrations who basically went, look, here's how America rules the world. Firstly, we become the biggest economy in the world, meaning that basically we are either the biggest customer or the biggest seller of insert whatever to every country. Secondly, if your country's a little bit busted ass, we'll be the ones to come in and either protect it or we'll be the ones to prop it up when it comes to foreign aid. Now, that has meant that, yes, in the post-World War II period, America's been on the top of the pile. But reality is that China have, of course, been running around and just basically buying off as many bunny nations as possible, and then they move up to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. And the truth is that, yes, there probably will be some consequence 10, 20 years into the future if the US turns around and says, look, we get it, but bugger it. It's all about us first. We're going to take care of our people.
We're not world police anymore.
Yeah, we're not doing the Team America thing anymore. So we'll see where that goes. But right now, when Trump's turning around and making a big announcement, remember this. It is one of, honestly, a dozen announcements which are made each and every day. So in the White House at the moment, every working day, he is signing a dozen of these executive orders.
Just think of the amount of Sharpies that he must be going through.
Can I say how much I love that? I love it. Like, now, I am a Sharpie man, right? Yeah. Like it used to be, my dream would be that when I grew up, I'd use a fountain pen to take notes. I just love it.
That's right. Well, that executive order stays signed when you sign it with a Sharpie.
It's so good. It's so good. But also the other thing to understand with Trump and Australia is we've just got to make sure that we flood the zone with people who are fluent in Trump, right?
That's right.
Not fluent in Biden, not fluent in Harris, not fluent in Clinton.
Fluent in Harris.
Yeah, she isn't. That's right. And that's part of the issue why people have had their issue with Rudd,
this is what
right?
People still don't understand. Like, the people who think Trump is danger, Trump is not Hitler. Trump is Vince McMahon. Trump is not Nazi. He's WWE.
Thank you. And remember, he is actually a man who has hosted WrestleMania's...
He was literally a character.
Correct.
He was literally a character in World Wrestling.
Trump Tower had WrestleMania 4, Randy Savage won the belt. Yes. 5 as well. And he's in the Hall of Fame, right? So, yeah, he is very much in there with Vince McMahon. Perhaps not the worst parts of Vince McMahon's behaviour. Oh, yes, perhaps right. Not the worst.
The fun Vince McMahon.
But yeah, the showman, the ringmaster, right? Yeah. And I think that a lot of people this time around, and certainly, look, I'm pro-Trump, right? I want his vision of America to come true. I love the idea of the American president having swagger and confidence and something that has a genuine feeling about that.
It's Clint Eastwood as president.
Exactly. But, sometimes you'll sort of turn around and it's like, oh, Joe Biden, greatest man of all time. You go, no one believes that, right? Okay, like Obama, a bit of a rock star. Okay, people believe that, right?
Amazing.
Like George W. Bush. Like, remember when he was the worst ever because he couldn't finish a sentence, but at least he was this wartime leader, right? But Trump is right up there. He's up there with the best days of Clinton, the best days of Obama, the best days of Reagan. And when you've got that swagger and you've got that confidence, and every day he looks at the clock and he is seeing that he's got only, X number of months and years left because he's not running again.
That's right.
And his actual and effective power runs out after 2 years, not 4. So he's going as hard as he possibly can. But as again, maybe it's a fool's errand. I must say the only time that I felt a little wobbly about my prediction that we are going to get a carve-out was Peter Navarro, who is his trade representative, and he was one of 2 people who went to jail because they went, no, we're not playing with this January 6th committee. The other one is Steve Bannon, right? So hardcore. And he is a massive advocate of sanctions, and he is holding the line. And he is saying, no, Australia should get no exemption. So it'll be interesting if the world one step removed outside of the White House can get the influence over Trump to make the decision to say, all right, we'll let you off. Yep. Or it's going to be, you know what, part of the way that we can scare the world, that we are going to do 25% tariffs, or we are going to drop a bomb here or there, is at some time we have to draw a line and hold the line. with no exceptions. We all hope it's not this time, but we'll see.
That's right. Well, I think Trump, again, I'm still inclined to think that there will be a carve-out just because Trump, he thrives on personal relationships. He thrives on that handshake with a man. That's why I thought it was so significant that he called Anthony Albanese a very fine man. If Trump declares you're a fine man, that's it.
And he talked to him for 40 minutes.
Guy. That's right.
Like if we were getting the brush, like that it's 2 minutes at best, cursory conversation. Now, admittedly, I have no doubt that when the Prime Minister is telling this fishing story about how this phone call goes over the next 20 years, it's going to get longer and longer and longer and longer. But I'm pretty sure of the 40 minutes, we
spoke for 24 hours. Nobody slept.
Yeah, but I also have the sense that, Albo might have got in 3 minutes, and then it's like, let me tell you about Wisconsin. Oh, really? Tell me more.
And now let's go to the even bigger game in town, talking about sort of American exceptionalism and America first versus American intervention and America world police. He said that he's going to go and buy Gaza, right? Now, I kind of like this because it is just such a Trumpian move where he just looks at a situation as he would instinctively from the point of view of a property developer.
Yeah.
Like this is his bread and butter. This is how he made all his money. And he just looks at this rubberized real estate next to these beautiful Mediterranean beaches and he thinks, what the are you guys doing?
Yeah, why
This is a golden real estate opportunity and you idiots are fighting amongst yourselves.
Yeah, we got a chance reset.
And it kind of puts the whole thing, like obviously it's never going to happen, but it does actually, put the whole thing in perspective. Say, hang on a minute. Why aren't you doing this? Let's just go back to ground zero. But it also, again, it does the same thing. It says, if you lot don't sort this out, I'm going to come in and sort it out for you. So you better get your act together.
Well, let me put it this way. If anyone has worked for a company for 5 years or longer, you've seen a few managers come and go, right? In lots of different departments. Yep. So okay, this one means business because they do this. This one's going to say nothing. This one's just going to change the letterhead. Oh, this one might make us do an extra course, but there's nothing really that's going to change. So if you think you've seen it all before, then generally speaking, if you know that the American president can only go so far, cannot back this side, cannot back that side, then
just going to keep doing what you've been doing.
What happens in the negotiation.
Yeah.
But if a manager walked into your work tomorrow and went, all right, hands up, who's been here for longer than 5 years? All right, you're all on your first warning. Because it's time for us to regenerate. You're all on your first warning. Right. Everyone straight away goes, oh, this isn't somebody I've seen before. Yeah. I don't know where it's going to end, but we haven't seen this before. So obviously, Qatar is going to pay to rebuild Gaza. Why? Because Hamas's leadership was in Qatar while their citizens were dying, right? Yeah. They were the ones that were in the room negotiating the hostage stuff, right? But in terms of Trump, he's trying to send a message to them to say, look, I'm all in on Israel, and you don't know what that means because you've heard it before, but you don't know what it really means for me. So, of course it's a negotiating tactic. The problem with shock and awe is that at a point in time, you sort of start to live with it, right? Like it's like, remember, say, again, maybe your next door neighbour has decided, they're pulling their bathroom out. And the first day you hear, you're like, I can't live next to this. 2 weeks in, it's annoying, but I've got it, right? It's like the aircraft noise thing. Yeah. So, you have to vary up the act.
But this is why I think Trump can get away with these sorts of things, whereas other presidents simply couldn't. Because as you say, with every other president, if Obama said it, he's never going to do that. But whereas with Trump, there's always, because he's crazy. I mean, it's classic madman diplomacy.
Yep.
There's something in the back of your head that says, this guy's so crazy, he just might. And it's that keeps you on your toes. And it's that therefore, hopefully is the cattle prod to some kind of breakthrough or progress, which is how you got the ceasefire deal with Hamas and Israel. And again, it also sort of puts the lie to a lot of the hysteria that has already been there around the conflict. I mean, the thing that really made me laugh in a very sort of dark and black, wry way was when Trump makes his announcement he's going to, turn Gaza into a condo strip. And people go, you can't do that. It's ethnic cleansing. That's ethnic cleansing. And you go, hang on a minute. I thought it already was ethnic cleansing.
Yeah. Yes, good point.
You said that was already happening.
Yeah, good point.
And now it's just like, what, more ethnic cleansing?
More or new or different?
It's like you've been so hysterical for so long, it just sort of doesn't work anymore. So he turns everyone into the boy who cried wolf a bit.
Well, I'm so glad, because I was literally going to say it as well, right? This idea of, we get why the stakes are where they are and people's historical connections, right? And I'm not blowing that away, but it's like, for those of us who haven't lived those things, we've heard a lot of people ramping the chat right up, and it's hard sometimes for people to stay in touch with that, right?
Yep.
But the thing about, again, we've all had that friend who just knows how to buy a car, knows how to negotiate a price, the type of person who will send back a meal, and not because they're an asshole. It's just they believe that this is a transaction and I'm going to pay as little for as much as possible, right? That's the deal. I don't care that you've got commission and you're sob-storying me that it's the end of the month and, without the commission, the kids aren't going to get... No, mate, screw, right? And that is ultimately any deal maker, but that is, again, going to be Trump, right? Yeah. So all of the usual emotive responses, which generally speaking politicians shit the bed about, right? Which is as soon as they start to go, oh, people are getting fired up, people are getting angry... Literally, remember what Trump had to say about tariffs in the past, which is, look, if prices go up a little bit, that's just a price to pay, but it's okay, they'll come down eventually. Now, that is exactly the opposite of what the expectation was of his presidency, which was that all prices go down all the time. This was part of the Albo thing that I keep banging on about cost of living. He made a promise to make it better. It all got worse, so surprise, surprise, people remember what the promise was, right? But with Trump, people seem to be willing to forgive because either there's the mad genius thing, the swagger thing, the unpredictable thing, but in the end, they know that if you're an American, geez, it's good to have a president that's all in for you, like all in for your country. Because while a lot of people understand that, rich countries can help poorer countries become less poor, which means they're less susceptible to terrorism. Perfect example, think about Australia after the Bali bombings, when, remember, JI running around parts of Indonesia? Well, Australia decided to build schools, so the school that you went to wasn't a school that was funded by the terrorist organisation. Guess what? We now don't have the same worries that we had 20 years ago. Yep. So there are consequences to this swagger, but... if you're an American and anyone who's been there over the past few years, as wonderful a country as it is, I got married there, I love it, right? There's a lot of poverty in that country, right? Yeah. There's a lot that's broken in that joint. So if you see your government spending $1 million, $1 billion, or $1 trillion anywhere but fixing that problem, you want to say to the president, pal, let's fix this first. So if Trump's turning around and that's his central message, that I'm doing this for you, we'll see where it ends. But in terms of your emotional response, I repeat, just wait a week and make sure that you check with Joe every week. He'll tell you whether the sky's fallen in or not. In the meantime, just keep head up and enjoy the surrounds.
Oh, I love it. What a perfect note to end on. Paul Murray, host of Paul Murray Live. The clue's in the name.
Love you.
Thanks so much for joining us, Tim. And that's all we have time for this week. Thank you so much for your company. It's been an absolute blockbuster episode. Hopefully we haven't made your brain hurt too much. You can, of course, flick us an email and tell us if we have made your brain hurt too much at therealstory@novapodcasts.com.au, or you can slide into my DMs on the gram. I'm on the grid. At Joe_Hildebrand is my handle, and just give us a little tickle up. You can also leave a review. You can give us 5 stars. I think that's the only review that the operating system accepts. You can tell us what you think, as long as you love it. And of course, if you want to read any more of me, you can catch me every Monday and Saturday in pretty much every newspaper in the country. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.
2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, Reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app, revofitness.com.au, or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.